Good evening, this is Mike Simon. I'm here to talk about this week's readings, and I want to start with chapter 6 and the Thielen chapter. It was interesting to be back reading Thielen after a week off. I really thought that his writing about his horizontal history was very interesting. Just the fact that I just don't think it would be as rich to study things like financial aid, regulation in higher education, philanthropy's impact on higher education, without using that horizontal approach and that broader approach. So that was really quite interesting. The 3 chapters that we read this week, I thought had some great quotes in them. The one from Thielen that I really appreciated was, often the sideshows run the circus. And I thought to myself, well, that sounds familiar to some of the experiences I've had in higher education administration over the years, but I can also see how what he's basically saying is that, if you don't look at these other players in the horizon, if you will, then you can't really understand the vertical institutions because you don't have the context to do so. Looking at chapter 8, the Robbins chapter, I have to say this chapter seemed really dense to me, which was interesting because then I read Tierney in chapter 9, and he wrote on page 132 that good writers sweat over a sentence. And I just wasn't sure, I guess, that Robbins was really sweating over her sentences in terms of thinking about is this the most direct and least confusing way to share the idea that she was trying to communicate. So just thought that was, I guess, just my personal opinion about it. I'm sure other folks probably love that chapter. One of the quotes that I thought was striking in her chapter was on page 105. History tends to make you less, not more sure. And I couldn't help but reflect on my own comments at the beginning of this class that history helps us keep from repeating our mistakes. And of course, Robbins is saying, well, actually, the more you look at history, the less you know about it. It just really struck me. I guess I hadn't thought of it that way. I will say that, again, her approach initially seemed unnecessarily complicated. I thought breaking text into word counts and argument structures would lead to oversimplification. I thought, how are you going to understand the broad themes of what's being said if you're just counting words? But by the end of the chapter, I found myself appreciating how her method helped address author bias, meaning the person who was doing the research on the original document might be approaching it from a certain bias, and by literally counting the words, going through that process, and breaking down sentence structure and breaking down arguments, you have to would force you, I would think, to be a little more objective in your approach to that. And then I also like when she wrote on page 19 that the greatest benefit of quantification is its ability to visually represent the text, and that's exactly right. Again, I thought at first I thought I was going to really hate that chapter. Hate's too strong a word, but just not enjoy it overly much. And what I ended up finding is that the chapter was actually very helpful. And then I really enjoyed chapter 9. I like this idea of life histories as being, really 3 things, and depending on how you approach it as the researcher and how you choose to read into it as the reader. It really reminded me a lot of the counseling profession in that the skill sets that are necessary, the ability to listen, the ability to really provide context and to make that person feel comfortable with you in order to really get the depth of information that you're looking for. So just really enjoyed chapter 9 and felt that Tierney did a great job sharing that and using his own experiences to sort of put a context around the writing of a life history. And so he sort of used a miniature life history, I guess, to demonstrate the effective writing of life histories. The one thing he said is that approach doesn't lend itself to the approaches that were shared by Robbins in Chapter 8. But I don't know. I think maybe if a life history sits in an archive for 50 or 100 years, and then someone from some future time uses word counts and argument structure and tries to analyze it in that way, it may be just as effective as any other original research or archival document in the analysis of that. So I'm hoping that our discussion in class will help clarify that a little bit, and maybe some of my colleagues in the class will address that thought that he shared. So that's it from Colorado. Looking forward to chatting with you all in our asynchronous discussion. Thanks.